Cool, we're back. Radar Radio. It's the Neighbourhood show, and today we are sitting down with one of the most successful A&R men of the last couple of decades. He's signed acts such as Dizzee Rascal, Wiley, Adele, MIA, Jack Pignate. The list goes on. I want to give a big warm welcome to Nick Huggett.
Hey!
Nice to see you.
Hello, Nick.
How you doing?
How are you?
Wonderful.
I missed you, you know.
Been a while, hasn't it?
So me and Nick
You two go back.
We go back a little bit.
Yeah.
We go back a little bit. We worked together when Nick joined Island Records in 2009. I think it was
8, 9, something like that.
2008,
Yeah.
2009. And yeah, we always had a laugh there and worked together for probably about 5-6 years. You know, and became close. Worked on acts together as well. And we both since left Universal, so we speak, but haven't seen him for a minute. So happy to see him. Happy to have you here, Nick.
How are
So
you?
I'm all right. Bit wet. Summer's gone.
Yeah,
It's all over now.
Summer's
yeah,
done.
It's definitely. Do you know what? Just doing a little bit of research on you as well. I kind of feel like you have been like a football player who has moved about quite a bit.
I've moved about.
Yeah,
a
you've
bit,
been in the Premier League for a little while, moved about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been about 17 years I've been doing A&R.
Yeah.
But when I've worked in music since I left school. So I worked in a few different places, some longer than others.
Yeah.
You know. But it's interesting to work on the independent side as much as the major label side, and just to have that point of reference. You know, I think that's kind of one of the interesting things.
Yeah, because it's pretty rare that someone's worked at, you know, you've worked at Excel, which is essentially an independent company under Beggars Group. You've worked at Columbia underneath Sony, Island Records underneath Universal, and Parlophone, which is part of Warner's Group. So you've seen it.
Got nowhere else to go now.
You've seen it all. You've seen it all.
Which area are you from? Are you a Londoner?
I'm from Croydon. I'm from the suburbs, Croydon.
Croydon, okay.
Yeah.
And how did you get, because I want to kind of start from the beginning with you a little bit. What was your first introduction into working in music? Because I know that you worked at a record label, and that's not a record label, a record shop.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, when I was at school, I just knew I wanted to work in music and be involved with music. But where I went to school, you were either encouraged to be a builder or a carpenter or a electrician or something like that. So when you say to the careers officer, I'd like to work in music, what jobs can I do? They can't really tell you.
Yeah.
So they just sort of go, well, don't you want to be an electrician? I'm like, not really. No, I like music. So I had to kind of find my own way into it. Do you know what I mean? And so the nearest thing that I could find was going to work in a record shop. And the important thing about that was it's pre-internet. So this was in the early 90s, 92, 93, something like that. And really the one of the main appeals about going to work in a record shop was being able to listen to like everything, every bit of music that had ever come out. I wanted to absorb it all. I wanted to, because, you know, again, you know, people don't realise how lucky they are now, but you could only hear all that music if you had the money to buy it.
Definitely.
You know, I only had so much money every week to buy records and things. So this was a way of like studying the classics. Do you know what I mean?
And we've actually had a few conversations since we've been doing this about, you know, starting from people's journeys, and a few people have said that they started working at a record shop, and a few times I've actually mentioned as well, that like working at a record shop, or record shops were quite synonymous to like a youth centre, in a sense where people used to go to a record shop, congregate, like, and have everyone had a liking to music, and literally just sit there, listen to music all day, buy new music.
Community.
Yeah, it was
community,
like,
you know, and you meet a lot of people through it, and that ultimately led to me getting a gig and doing A&R. I didn't even know what A&R was when it was first suggested to me that I'd give it a go. But you just meet a lot of people, you know. So that was the main benefit. I didn't know that working in a record shop was going to lead to what it led to, and I did it for 8 years, which is a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know. So
Were you a collector of records before you started at the store?
yeah. I mean, I started buying records as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and then just went and worked in my local independent shop where I used to buy records.
Yeah. What was that called?
That was called H&R Cloaks in Croydon. But it was important that, you know, I didn't go and work in HMV or Alpro. I worked in the local independent shop because they had, you know, they had all the kind of import hip hop records, or they had all the the punk records. You know, they just had like a broader selection than what you would get in like an HMV or an Alpine.
Yeah,
or whatever.
And what were you into at that like early 90s? What were you sort of into? What were you buying? What were you wanting to listen to? What was exciting you?
I mean, I'd grown up with hip hop, and then at a point I decided I wanted to kind of extend out from that. And when I talked about listening to classics, I wanted to hear all the Led Zeppelin records and all the Jimi Hendrix records and all the Beatles records and all the James Brown records and all the Donny Hathaway records and all the Miles Davis records. You know, I just wanted to kind of experience it all. So again, spending 4 years working in that broad independent record shop. It wasn't a specialist store. It sold everything. Just had the ability to kind of absorb all of that. So I mean, hip hop in the main part, but I was discovering a lot of jazz funk and soul and rare groove and things like that, and a lot of rock music and punk and folk and disco and drum and bass was emerging. You know what I mean? That was exciting. So it was just a combination of things that were happening at the time and also that kind of element of discovery.
Yeah.
You know?
Were you raving at that time?
Yes, raving a bit.
Where were you going?
I used to go to Charles Peterson and James Avell used to do a thing called That's How It Is at Bar Rumba on a Monday night.
Yeah.
They used to have movement on a Thursday, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a small, you know, these were small clubs because it was like, I was very much into like the alternative club thing.
Yeah.
The mainstream club thing wasn't for me. It was again, that was the era of like the super clubs emerging, the Cream and Gatecrash and all these things. And at the time, you know, I couldn't identify with house music, or at least what house music had become at that stage. So I was very much on like an alternative thing. They play jazz records and techno records and hip hop records, and
I'm actually
you know,
kind of this is one thing that I am a little bit jealous of today, is the options in places to go back then during the week. Yeah, because there were, I feel like now club wise there isn't so much going on in the week, whereas before you had this going on a Monday, you had that going on a Tuesday, you had this going on.
It was a nightmare if you had to work the next day.
Yeah.
But it was good. You know, that was kind of part of it as well. You would, the midweek club thing was. I definitely found myself out more in the week than I would on the weekend. Weirdly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned James Lavelle there.
Yeah.
So you used to go into his nights.
Yeah.
And you ultimately ended up.
Yeah, I met him through working in Mr. Bongo, which is the other shop that I went to, which was a specialist store in Soho.
So Mr. Bongo's, I mean, that's a pretty legendary shop.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, well, my generation will know that shop, will know that name, will, you know, have been there to buy records in those vinyl days. I mean, give us a little bit of a backstory about how you came to work at Mr. Bongo.
I mean, again, when you asked me, you know, was I collecting records? That was one of the shops I used to go to. You know, growing up, I would sort of come up from Croydon on the train and then do a tour of the shops. It's a common thing a lot of my generation did. You go to Mr. Bongo and Soul Jazz and Uptown and there were just so many record shops to go and check out, and you go to different ones for different things, but Mr. Bongo was always the one for me. That was my favourite shop. And also Mr. Bongo's a few different things on you know, I used to buy a lot of like jazz dance records and kind of trip hop and acid jazz. You know, those were the sort of genres that were around at the time, but as the independent hip hop thing started to emerge, they were the ones getting the records. You know, they were the only ones in the country getting those records. They were equivalent of like what Fat Beats was in New York, you know. And that was really interesting, actually, the independent hip hop scene that was emerging through that shop.
Yeah,
amazing.
I mean, how were they going out and just sort of securing that lane and being the only people that were kind of exclusively?
I think they just kind of built a customer base for that shop and those sorts of records, and then you know, a lot of it would be direct to the artist, the managers. The Fat Beats used to have a distribution service, so you sort of like have an account with them, and you know. But in time, Mr. Bongo would end up distributing those records to other shops in the UK. But we were doing quite a lot. We'd do like sort of 300 of copies of a Jurassic 5 or a Sean J. Period or a Mos Def record, or you know. it was interesting.
And what were you
times.
doing there? What was your?
Well, that wasn't what my remit was within there. My remit within that shop was to do all the kind of alternative to the hip hop thing. So I was getting the drum and bass, some of the early garage records, disco records. I remember Roy Davis Jr. being a really big, Gabrielle being a really big record for us.
Yeah.
You know, as well as like Stardust and things like that.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah.
Mr. Bongo wasn't known for that kind of music, but those records were just transcended all of the genres. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to ask you
Yeah.
as well, like your first idea of a hit, like coming across a hit, because you know, working at a record shop, I know that obviously people are coming there buying records or whatever, but like there must have been a time where, you know, you've got a record early and literally like people are just going absolutely crazy for that record.
Yeah, I think those ones, Stardust, Music Sounds Better with You, Roy Davis Jr., Gabrielle, Blue Boy, Remember Me. These are all records that we got on import that then got licensed onto UK labels and became top 40 hit or top 10 hit.
Yeah.
You know, but they ended up becoming hits like that sometime after. And it's only when I look back now I realise, that had some bearing on what I went on to do. Do you know what I mean? But like, because you're effectively A&R in the stock of the record shop and like going, you know, you listen to it, we're gonna do well.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I guess it's maybe started there without me even realising that.
Yeah, because it's kind of key to know as well. Yeah, you couldn't just if you had a record, you couldn't just go to a record shop and just think that, okay, I'm going to give them the record for them to just sell. You could turn it down. You could.
Yeah, a lot of people just used to come and like sale or return their records or self-distribute. You know.
It's interesting because we sat down with Rich Thomas, Kano's manager, a few weeks ago, and he had a similar start in the business.
He used to work at Fat Cat.
Yeah.
And
he was a buyer as well, and said a similar thing.
I
You
used to
know,
buy records off of him.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you've known Rich from way back then. Yeah. So moving on from Mr. Bongo, obviously we mentioned that you'd met James Lavelle previously, and he'd started a label called Mowat.
Yeah, I mean, even when I left school, that had started.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really cool, and I was like, I'd love to work there. It'd be amazing. So as I say, I got to know him through the shop and through the scene that we were involved in. I used to go and watch him DJ with Giles and things like that. And so that was the kind of entry point, really.
Yeah.
We got to know each other. We used to hang out. Then he was like, I think you should try A&R. I had to kind of call someone, ask them what that was. I didn't know the concept of it. Again, at the time, that's in sort of late 90s, early 2000s. The idea of an A&R man, and also the idea of an A&R man has changed over time, you know, from what it meant way back at the start of things to what it is now.
Yeah.
You know.
Explain what did it mean then?
Well, traditionally, A&R, artists and repertoire, was someone who would find the material for the artist. Because again, I think people tend to think that it's a recent thing that you have artists and you have songwriters, and artists sometimes sing other people's songs, but that goes all the way back. You know, I mean, my sort of reference point at the start of that is like the Brill Building and Carole King and Neil Sedaka and all of that, and they were writing songs for all of the artists. And so the A&R man would find a song and match it with the artist and have a hit, you know. So it was like a sort of mathematical equation.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what, but then over time, you know, effectively when I started, it was really just sort of like talent scout. You know, you find a talent, you know. And not until later on in my career did I start to get into the kind of co-writing and the kind of like matching a writer or producer, or, you know, the kind of more finer detail of record making.
Why do you think that came later on in your career?
Because all the artists that I'd initially signed were very self-sufficient.
Okay.
And obviously I had no experience of it either, or, you know.
Yeah.
But again, where I come from, Mowax, XL, you find someone, they're doing something good, you kind of go, that's cool, let's put it out. You know, you don't meddle with it particularly.
Yeah.
And so the first few artists that I signed and the first few artists I had success with didn't need me sort of suggesting this, that, or the other necessarily.
Yeah.
So that came a little bit later down the line.
It's interesting because, you know, today I think a lot of young people are very familiar with the term of A&R, and also familiar with the fact that it sounds like a good job or a cool job, or you know, maybe an influential position. somewhere where you're close to the music, and a lot of people, they want to do it, but I think, as you said there, you know, what it is to actually do A&R is still another thing, you know.
Well, there's no right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
And as much as like people think, oh, it's a good job to, it has negative connotations as well, certainly amongst kind of artists and managers,
for sure.
you know, because there's bad A&R people out there.
Yeah.
You know, that don't help, that do meddle, that do try and kind of like stamp their ego on it in some way.
Who's the worst A&R that you've ever... No,
You.
I'm joking. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. I'm terrible. Sorry. Yeah. So the Mowax days.
Yeah.
So how were they? Because that was a real cool small.
Yeah, I started as a fan and then ended up working at the label. But as it was interesting. I never wanted to work at XL. It wasn't cool to me. You know, that was the rave label. I wasn't into rave. I wasn't into hardcore. Yeah. You know.
It's funny because I think for the younger generation now, they might not have heard of Mowax.
Yeah, no, I think some people know and some people don't. Yeah. You know, and it's hard to know what it means, you know, now. It's important to me sort of growing up.
Of course.
Some of those records still sound good and some not so much.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a scene-based label. You know, you had a lot of scene-based labels kind of emerging at that time or had done through time. And I guess it feels like far less now you get kind of scene-based labels.
Yeah.
What were some of the big records that came from that label?
I mean, I always felt like the label was bigger than any of the artists, but DJ Shadow was the main kind of one who kind of crossed over to some extent. You know, there was real interest in that. Still kind of cultish, still underground, still cool, you know. But DJ Shadow and Uncle. But there was lots of really cool, interesting kind of underground records that came out through that label as well. Yeah.
And so, what was the transition from Mowax to XL? Because were they both part of Beggar's Group originally?
So originally Mowax was independent and they'd done a deal with Polygram at the time, A&M, but when that became Universal, it was out of the deal, and so they did a deal with XL.
Right.
I remember James telling me, I've done a deal with XL, and I was like, what, the rave label? Like the Prodigy and SL2? Because we saw ourselves differently. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he was like, I know Richard's really cool, and he's like, you know, he's got a really great label and he's into what we do. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. And so as, unfortunately, Mowax kind of wound down as I came into it. This wasn't my fault. It kind of wound down as through the 2 or 3 years that I was there. And so then I kind of got absorbed into XL through that because I was, you know, it was essentially the same company. Yeah. So Richard, I guess, gave me a shot. Working at XL.
Amazing. What year was that?
2002, 2003, something like that, I guess.
Amazing. Yeah. So this is really, I guess, the start of your journey as an A&R man properly.
Yeah, because I'd had a couple of years just to kind of try and figure it out and feel it and just see, you know, because no one tells you how to do A&R, what it's about, or you know, I remember sitting on the first day, didn't even have computers then, playing a bit of paper and a telephone. What am I going to do?
No, crazy. So I always remember as a youngster, like trying to get into the record industry or doing my work experience at different labels and always hearing about this guy called Nick Huggett who'd signed Dizzee and Wiley and Adele, but I cared more about Dizzee and Wiley at that point. I was just like, wow, you know, seminal albums, like I guess like the first artist out of the grime scene, or the first two artists.
Well, they weren't grime then.
Well,
didn't exist.
What did you call
Sublo,
it?
There you go. There you go. What'd you call it?
What'd you call it? So look, talk to us about those early days. Like I want to know everything. How did you go from working at, you know, an eclectic label such as Mowax, where you're doing bits of import and there's the jazz and the fusion records, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a cultural explosion in the form of, well, what do you call it?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I was working at Mowax and I'd come across So Solid. Yeah. And this is before they broke and before they, you know, this is when I was going to Big Apple in Croydon and like hearing the records through there and those early So Solid records and just being like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I haven't really heard anything like this before. And so, and I tried to get involved in that, and like James the Vel didn't quite get it, and so and then when he saw a picture of So Solid once they'd been signed, he was like, "They look amazing. Why didn't you just smack me around the face and tell me we need to sign?" I was like, "Oh no, didn't know I could do that. I'll do it next time." So he could, we've got a sense of like something happening. But when I heard "I Love You" by Dizzee, it was just, it was even more exciting again, or revolutionary again.
Where did you hear
that? Yeah.
I think I probably first heard it on Pirate.
Yeah.
Just a lot of pirate radio back then.
I remember.
But the interesting point about hearing it on Pirate was not only did I first heard it on Pirate,
yeah,
and I bought a copy in Big Apple in Croydon maybe, but I was starting to hear it on XFM, and I started to hear it on Radio 1 Specialist, and you're like, well, okay, I'm not hearing any other records from Pirate Radio crossing into these other spaces. That was really interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, to track him down.
That's crazy.
You had to track him down. Break that
process,
down to me. Yeah. What was the process?
I mean, again, this was pre-internet. You couldn't just email someone directly, so you had to just know people.
Yeah.
And I did know a lot of people, and that's always been one of my things, is knowing a lot of people and knowing how to get to someone. So I always felt like I could always get to someone within 24 hours, So I knew a guy called Tony Farcides, who was a journalist who knew Nick Huggett, who's Dizzee's manager, and I got in touch with him, called him, again, because this is before email, so you just call someone like, "Oh, is that Nick?" Yeah, And also, when you're sort of calling someone, you don't know who these people are, what they're about. It's kind of like you sort of imagine something, but you can't quite. So called Nick, invited us down to meet him at the studio.
Nick is Dizzee's manager, just for some context.
Yeah. Was back then, still is.
Yeah, was then, still is now.
All the way through. Yeah.
All right.
So that was the start. So the first time I just met Nick, and then the second time I met Dizzee.
Yeah.
Nick,
Where was the studio at that time?
Bermondsey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know from like listening to "I Love You"? Did you know? Yeah, I definitely want to sign, or was you kind of reaching out just to find out a little bit more about the scene and what it was he was doing?
No, I'm very instinctive about stuff, and it's not like I just bought out a record and didn't know about the rest of what was going on. Like I say, as Gary's thing had happened, I'd known about that, and So Solid had come along and known about this, but this felt like something removed even from that and new. So sort of, I knew what it was. Like say, we didn't have a name for it. It wasn't grime at that point, But I just knew it was really exciting, and I'd had nothing like it, and I wanted to be involved. Yeah.
What were Nick and Dizzee's plans? Were they actively looking at labels? Did they have an understanding of the music business?
Nick knew quite a bit about the music business. He'd come up through similar world to Rich Thomas, actually, through Fat Cat and all of that sort of thing. And he'd been involved in distribution. He put together the studio, so he had some sort of technical stuff. And Dizzee was like 17, 18 and just had this, like, he was intense, but he also kind of quite naive about the music business and what all that was, but that was great because he didn't give a shit who I was.
Yeah.
Didn't know who I was, didn't mean anything to, or who any of my competitors were that were lining up wanting to sign him and take him to Nando's and all of those sort of things that they were doing,
Yeah.
But I think what the important point I remember actually was that a lot of the other people trying to sign him were going, yeah, cool, we're going to get you with Neptunes, and it was like, you're missing the point. Like, listen to it. This sounds amazing. Like, it wasn't just the fact that it was in a British accent. It wasn't just that he was being like honest, but it was the sonic of it, the sound of it. It sounded like nothing else.
Yeah.
And like really British sounding as well.
Yeah.
What's the point of having someone like that on a Neptune's beat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you sign? Was it a singles deal to begin with Dizzee, or was it straight?
No, it was
deal,
competitive, and it was an albums deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I always remember seeing you had this like lanyard AAA Esky that was passed from like 2003 or something.
Yeah.
talk about Wiley, because Nick Detton also managed Wiley at the same time. So he had Diz and he had Will.
Yeah.
I think Wiley introduced him to Dizzee.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah.
I mean, I haven't heard that from the horse's mouth.
Yeah,
but
no, I
I'm
think
just
that's
reading
right.
things. And, so, I mean, just how was that time back then, going to the dance, going to Esky and...
Well, it was amazing.
Did you go Eskimo dance?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was there.
Sick.
But it was amazing. It just felt exciting, and it was reaching outside of the world into other areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a real difference between Dizzee and Wiley. Wiley's a maverick.
Yeah.
And he's just brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just going back to Dizzee real quickly, yeah, because you mentioned that it was a straight album deal with him. But prior to him actually signing the deal, did he have more stuff recorded, or did he start his recording process after?
No, he kind of had the album, So I turned up and I got given 2 CDs of material, and they would have like 12 songs that all sounded like "I Love You," or 12 songs that all. So they're all versions, 12 songs that sounded like "Stop That."
Yeah.
And so what they would do is just pick the best one with the best lyrics, or take some lyrics from one and put it to the other. So there was a process of like condensing those 2 CDs into an album.
Yeah.
And they went up to Sheffield to just take themselves out of it and just finish it off.
Okay.
Why Sheffield?
Nick knew someone up there with a sort of residential studio. It was nice, and just taking Dizzee away from because the other thing to bear in mind is what was happening in London at the time. It was lively.
Yeah.
There was
clashing
a lot
at
going
radio, all of that, and you could easily get drawn into some nonsense.
Yeah. Of course. So did you pick up both Boy in the Corner and Treading on Thin Ice at the same time or similar time?
Signed them both at the same time. They weren't albums like this is Boy in the Corner.
Yeah.
It was like sign them as artists.
Yeah.
And help them realise those albums.
Yeah.
But as I say, they were very self-sufficient artists. It is more or less like, here's my record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's an A&R process in that, but again, that A&R process was different to the A&R process with MIA. Or
Of course.
Claire or Adele or whoever it was.
And so you oversaw Dizzee putting out Boy in the Corner and also Showtime?
All 3 albums that XL put out, Showtime and Maths and English.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Sold some real numbers.
Big.
Yeah, I mean, every one of those records gold, but he done his proper numbers when he left XL, went independent.
Boy in the Corner, I was looking at the numbers today.
Oh yeah,
What is
what's
it? I'm
done?
curious.
It's done 295,000. So you nearly got a platinum album.
All right, I'll have to re-up the plaque.
Yeah.
You've nearly got. Yeah, you definitely have to. Richard.
Yeah.
You'll have. That will get there this year.
Yeah,
That will get there. in the
been
next
how long's
6
it
months.
been?
It's been that's
So
03.
it's longer than
so
10 years, isn't it?
14 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's been
He
14 years.
He done the gig last year.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
missed that actually. I think it's that.
So you put out the first Dizzee album, you put out the first Wiley album. Just in terms of the timeline, what was the next act that you signed? Jack?
No, MIA
MIA?
came
Okay.
after that, which was a weird one. It was an interesting one. Because it didn't, it wasn't. She's not grime. It's not fitting that world particularly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I heard
It
enough.
is anti-establishment though.
It is anti-establishment for sure. Yeah, she's into that kind of political thing. She's an artist in the truest sense because she went to St Martin's. She's as much visual as she is kind of like music, and
Yeah.
so there's a whole thing with her.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a kind of punk DIY aesthetic.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably, that came after a year or so.
So because she'd already put out the piracy funds.
Yeah, we
terrorism.
helped her put that out.
Okay.
We sent her to Philly to work with Diplo.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And she spent like a month out there making that. Well, no, maybe a couple of weeks just doing a mixtape because it was when you sort of did mixtapes and things.
Yeah.
So she put that together. No, she put Galang out first. Sort of like bashment sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really bashment. You know what I mean? People would be like, oh, that's not bashment.
Yeah.
Sound like bashment to me. You know what I mean? Anyway, won't split hairs. But no, she did the mixtape with Diplo. Yeah.
I read today. This is just off the topic fact. I mean, question about something that I read on the The internet.
I don't believe what you read on the internet.
So the internet told me that she was 42 years old, and I just thought she was younger than that.
Yeah, she looks.
To be honest with you,
me and her are the same age and from the same area, Mitcham.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
mad.
Yeah.
yeah. I kind
mad.
of thought that she was that age anyway. To be honest with you, 40.
Like she hasn't really aged.
Yeah, she don't look
Like
like
Pharrell,
she looks-
that's not aged.
40 is still
young.
And maybe we're getting old, innit?
No,
But
we're definitely
40
getting old,
is
but-
not old, really. I used to think 40 was.
I mean,
old.
I'll tell you when
really.
I get there.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, crazy. Yeah, I was looking her up on the wiki, and then I said, "Bro, she's 42." I was thinking,
Yeah.
"No way, is she 42?" Like,
She's like 40, 41, like slightly,
yeah.
literally about the same age as me.
So
Great.
with all of
Yeah.
that, Adele becomes in the mix.
Yeah.
How talk to me a little bit about how you discovered her or how she came into your path.
I had a scout called Tick who now works at, for Young Turks, but at the time I was just asking around. I wanted someone to start feeding me stuff, and MySpace was like a new thing.
Yeah.
And so I met him and I really liked him, and he had good taste in music. So we just started. He used to send me emails with because the internet existed at this point.
Yeah.
And so did MySpace. And so he just started sending me links.
Who's this? Jack.
This is Tick.
Oh, Tick.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So Tick was sending me links, and after about a month, he'd send like 10, 15 things and they're all rubbish, and I'd be like, I'm not sure this is working out, mate.
Yeah.
And then in one email, I think he sent Adele, Jack Pignata, and Kate Nash all in one hit, you know. And those were the new things that were on MySpace. And so he'd sent me that. I was in Barcelona with Dizzee was supporting Red Hot Chili Peppers. And you know, 'cause when you hear something like that, you always remember where you were, and it was a real moment for me hearing Adele for the first time. So I heard that on there, and I called him straight away. I said, "This girl's amazing. We need to get hold of her and meet her and stuff." And then that was the next hurdle because I was sending a message through MySpace, and she was ignoring my messages. And
I thought you were an internet perv.
Yeah.
little did she know.
Little did she know. So. When did you first see her sing live?
Jam in Brixton.
Mm-hmm.
I remember all of this because I just did a documentary for it. So I went back down there about a month ago for the first time in 10 years.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was Jam in Brixton 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And she was coming out of. She's a North London girl, but she was
living in West Norwood.
Yeah.
And Brit School.
But she's from Tottenham originally.
Yeah. But I always ever just knew her from South
Yeah,
London. Yeah. And so Jam in Brixton wasn't far from West Norwood where she was living, and not far from Brit School.
Yeah.
And again, that Brit School thing was like, Brit School? You know, I'm from Croydon. I used to work in a record shop, and Dane Bowers and people like that went there, and you used to kind of sneer about it.
Yeah, it wasn't like a credible.
There's no credibility to it.
Yeah.
You know? But she was amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
And so you got past the barrier of the internet and the MySpace messages.
Yeah, I used Jack Pignata to help.
Yeah.
Go, no, he's all right. Like, he's really cool.
Yeah.
You should meet
The
him.
cosign.
You know, yeah, exactly.
You got the cosign.
You know.
Because she's young, she doesn't have a manager. Was
Yeah,
it a
she
scenario
wasn't-
where
yeah.
you had to meet her parents, or what was the
She
situation?
came and met me at Ladbroke Grove Tube, and she had Ben, her guitarist, with her.
Yeah.
And for sort of backup kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think she just didn't know. I mean, again, she had that naivety when you're 17, 18.
Yeah.
I think now people are a bit more savvy and aware and know what people are, what they do, or you can look someone up. But at that time, you couldn't look up anything about anybody. So yeah, there was some naivety. Although what impressed me about her in our first meeting was how much she did understand about the music business, and I had to presume that she learnt that from going to Brit School.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, that they kind of explain. They at the very least explain to what a record company is and what they do and all that sort of stuff. You know, but yeah, she didn't have a lawyer or a manager or any of those.
Okay.
And when you talk about meeting her for those first times and hearing that first batch of music, what were you hearing?
I think it was just the 3 songs on the MySpace at that point. When you say what was here, what was I hearing in it?
As in,
or
no.
what
What were the songs? Did
Oh,
those songs
so
make
it
the
was
first
Hometown
album?
Glory,
Okay.
My Same, maybe Painting Pictures or something like that. But the one really was Hometown
Yeah.
Glory because of
Yeah.
just like the hairs on the back of my neck stood up.
That's
And
what
like
you know.
you can't explain that. That's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
something
yeah,
that
yeah.
happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
And But the funny thing is, I also remember the A&R meeting in which I played it and no one got it.
But that must be the most fulfilling thing when nobody does get it, but then it just becomes an outright smash.
But again, what you learn is trust in your own instinct,
Yeah.
and don't get swayed by the opinion in the room or anyone else if you believe in it. Do you know what I mean?
That must be the hard thing about being an A&R though, and taking an artist from the core grassroots, because you're at some point you're having to deal with other opinions, yeah, and sometimes as a normal human being, someone's opinion that you value very much, if it's opposed to yours, can sway your opinion. So, you know, how difficult is it as an A&R to deal with situations like that?
I mean, you got to have a pretty thick skin. You got to have some self-belief. You got to have some instinct, some gut, you know. You got to be prepared to argue, you know, sometimes. Sometimes the person you work for is right. But there's plenty of occasions I've gone, this is amazing, it's brilliant. And whoever I work for has gone, no, it ain't.
But isn't it easy?
You know, and then it's not been
Isn't
successful,
it easy?
you know.
Isn't it easy to say it's not? It's easy to say it's not.
It is, yeah.
It's harder to say
this
that it is, isn't it? With an A&R, because more often than not, you're most likely to get a lot of misses than the hits, right? No? Or is it law of
For
averages?
most people.
I know it's but different for you. But,
No, not so
but
much,
you
but
understand
no,
what I mean,
yeah,
though.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
easy to say, oh, nah. And then obviously if it's not, it's, you know, it's not easy to just make a hit, is it? So
No, I mean, I don't even really believe in things in those terms. This is one of the most overused terms that I've heard working in major labels in particular is, that's a hit, or
okay.
they're a star, because I don't really subscribe to that, because that record ain't a hit until it's a hit.
Yeah.
And that person's not a star until they're a star.
Yeah.
And, you know, the amount of times I've heard
Very
those things said, and then those records aren't hits and those people don't become stars, and you're just like, it's nonsense. Like,
Yeah.
just saying, and that's actually the reason why people find it easy to go, nah, because people just say that stuff all day long.
Yeah.
It's a hit, it's a hit. Start, you know, and then they're not, you know.
Yeah, I hear you.
So with you know Dizzee and Will, pretty self-sufficient, turned up. They had the majority of their
Turned up
records.
sometimes.
Turned up sometimes. Sometimes, you know, they had the majority of their records. You put them out. You
Yeah.
know, how did that differ from the process of making a record with, say, Jack or Adele?
Well, Jack and Adele was an interesting one because that's where I got into like finding producer. With Jack, it was like finding the right producer, and we tried a few people, and we ended up with Jim Abyss to make that record. We were kind of happy with the results, and it was a success in the end. But with Adele, that was my first experience of the co-writing thing, and that was really interesting because again, Jonathan, who became her manager after I met her, I kind of recommended her to Jonathan.
We're going to come back to that.
Okay, so he said, "Oh, I bumped into my friend, and she manages a writer called Egg White, and I think Egg and Adele should work together." I'm like, "Oh, who's Egg White?" And he was like, "Oh, you know, he's like worked with like Will Young and stuff." And I was like, "Will Young? Are you kidding? Like, this is XL. We're really cool. Like, we don't, you know, that's X Factor. Like, that's not, you know, really like anti that." And but anyway, you know, it happened, and I saw Adele in the evening that she'd done her first day with Egg, and I was like, "How was it?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, it was all right, you know." And I said, "Oh, well, let's hear the record," and she played me the song, which is called "Tired," and it was brilliant. It was really good. It wasn't necessarily a hit, but it sounded really good. Really liked it. So but she was unsure about going back.
Yeah.
And I was like, and so again, this is where the A&R thing comes in. It's like I put aside my preconceptions of someone that worked with Will Young and the X Factor, and said, "Oh no, that's really good," and encouraged her to go back and do another day.
Yeah.
And then they did Chasing Pavements. So, you know, and I remember getting that, and then my jaw dropped, and then Richard came out of his office, and everyone just kind of went, "Wow."
Yeah.
You know.
Was she pretty open initially to the idea of going and doing a co-write? Because, you know, in my experience, a lot of artists are precious about that, you know, especially if they're not straight, like just doing straight pop and they believe.
Yeah.
I've got a message, and it must be my, come from me.
She's precious about it, but at the same time, she's ambitious, and she trusts the people around her, and she trusted that what Jonathan was asking her to do was the right thing to do, and she trusted that when I said, "Oh, maybe you should go back for a second time," that there must have been something in it. So it's that openness to kind of trust the people around you, and that ambition and drive to that okay, I'm going to do this. You know? So that's kind of testament to her as an artist,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Jonathan Dickens, who's Adele's manager, has always been Adele's manager from the start. After you very kindly introduced him to her, I mean, you must be his best friend. You must be top of his.
Never calls me back. It does sometimes.
Jonathan,
He better.
Yeah, I mean, I've met Jonathan. He was managing MIA when I signed MIA.
Yeah.
So we knew each other.
Yeah.
Jonathan was working for another manager called Chris Morrison, who managed like Blur and Thin Lizzy and great sort of old school music biz character. And Jonathan, I'd had my initial meeting with Chris and then another meeting with Chris and Jonathan, and I was like, who's this guy? Because he'd come from an A&R back. He'd done A&R, and I was like, don't need another A&R person. I'm the A&R person. Yeah. And Chris Morrison's the manager. So what do you do? But so my initial thing was like, I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
But then obviously really got to know each other well, and we're good mates. So the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Because I also Jack Pagnotte has kind of said,
Can you explain to me? This is out of my own curiosity. I know, even more through him anyway, that when you work at certain record labels or whatever, that you have bonuses, for example, when you have a hit. With your situation at XL, with what you was doing, do you have did they give you incentives for when, I don't know, you sold this amount or you had got this in the charts, or
no, you
did it
don't
work
really get them at indie labels.
No, you didn't.
No, they did nothing. It wasn't that sort of situation. When I moved from XL to Columbia, it's the first time I had a contract.
Okay.
First time they said, "Oh, we're going to give you points on the record." No one even talked about that when I. I mean, XL builds people up from the start. Richard didn't have to give me a shot when contracts wound down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, no, there was nothing on paper or no obligation to do anything for me. You know. So when I left XL, there was a financial element to it, just because it wasn't like I went and chased the money, but it was a combination of things. But certainly, I wasn't being paid that well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So the first Adele record, obviously you put together the first album, 19.
Yeah.
And that came out 2008,
Yeah.
January, I think.
Jonathan finished it off. And the important thing that Jonathan did was put that Bob Dylan cover on there.
Okay.
And that obviously bridged the two albums. That became like an X Factor song and all of that. So that was really key. So as much as I'd moved on, Jonathan was able to kind of do a lot for her A&R wise.
And we've never had this conversation, but as I was sitting there this morning looking through it, I was thinking to myself, what was it that kind of made you get up and say, do you know what? I've got Dizzee. I don't even know if Wiley was still with you at that time.
No, you weren't there.
MIA, Jack, Adele.
Yeah.
Why?
And I had Cajun. I mean, that was 2007. I had a really good roster that
Cajun Dance
that year. They were a hot new band.
Yeah.
Nothing happened, but they were a hot band and a hot deal. So I had 2007. All of these artists, the summer of 2007, all these artists were making albums. Yeah. And I would go from studio to studio, and it was the most exciting year of my career in terms of like just the kind of creative stuff that was going on. You know.
What is it that made you at that time think, do you know what? I'm going to go and look at this Columbia situation, and
they called me. They called me and said, "Oh, we're interested in you." And also XL's great, but like XL's very aware of itself. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I had an ambition, not just an ambition for myself, but an ambition for the sort of artists that I wanted to work with.
Yeah.
I'd wanted to sign Lily Allen to XL. I thought she would have been great on XL.
Mm.
And I really pinpoint a kind of tone and pop music where if you think before Lily Allen, you didn't really have like unmanufactured, raw, outspoken kind of pop artists, but that's what she was.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, nah, we don't really do pop music, and you know, it was like, well, maybe we should,
Yeah.
you know, just try something different. You know, we had the White Stripes as the best garage rock and roll band. We had Dizzee was the best MC. You know, we had Basement Jacks as the best kind of dance music act. You know, we had the best pop act. You know. So I already so at that point I started to think, oh, maybe what I want to do and what they want to do is like slightly different.
Yeah.
You know, and lots of people would come through XL and then gone on to work at majors and it not really work out. So I was aware of that, a bit wary of that stuff, you know.
What was attractive about Columbia to you?
Yeah.
Well, one, they were offering me like a massive jump in pay, being brutally honest.
Yeah.
You know, money's not everything. And you couldn't have paid me to go and work somewhere rubbish.
Yeah.
But they had the Ting Tings and Mark Ronson and they were popping at that point.
Yeah.
So I just felt I was going into, and Calvin actually, although Calvin wasn't as well regarded at that point. But I felt like I was going in somewhere that was happening, you know. Mike Smith was running it, and I really liked Mike. And Mike's kind of like from a similar background to me. So I could identify with him. Yeah. So I went for it,
Yeah. Was Rick Rubin running the US
Rick was a
arm at the
co-president
time?
with Steve Barnett in America.
Okay.
And so I got to meet him through that, and we had a bit of kind of crossover with Adele and stuff. So yeah, that's where I got to know him, and also I think he'd kind of vouched for me to have a job at Columbia in the UK as well, based on liking Dizzee and Kevin Kasatsu, who manages Diplo, and was working at the time as well. So
we had a very strange meeting once where you introduced me to Rick Rubin.
Oh yeah,
and we sort of sat in a room and talked about, I don't even know what we talked.
Did he
about.
play? I remember him playing us the Jesus
album
before
played us some,
the Reduction,
some Kanye stuff, and then he wanted to go and have a lie down in your office, I think, and he went and had a sleep with his shoes off.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, just in the office, just like one of the most surreal.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Surreal moments ever. So, how was it? How did it change for you moving over to Columbia? Like, what was the difference in the ethos, the approach to work? Did you feel under pressure to sign and repeat the success that you'd had at XL?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to bear in mind that Adele wasn't the success then that she was now. You know, she was successful, but Duffy was more successful that year. She sold more records.
Let's just,
you know.
We're going to do this throughout the interview, actually. We're going to do this throughout the conversation. So Adele to date has done, on that record, 2.4 million records in the UK only alone. 7 times platinum, number one album. It's a lot of records.
It's all right, isn't it?
It's a lot of records. We're going to give you a total at the end, I think, because I've got the, got the old OCC log in here. So, but yeah, all right, fair enough. Granted, she wasn't the success
at that time,
but she had a number one album.
Yeah, she had a number one album, and she was a success. But it's funny how what the perception amongst people that work in the music business is of things. Some things that you think haven't done that well get really bigged up, and things that have done really well get kind of diminished a bit by chat and conversation and opinion, and and it's funny, I find it weird.
Yeah. But I mean, so how was the climate different though? What was that first year in Columbia like?
I mean, I struggled at Columbia. I have to say it wasn't a successful time for me, because it was under 2 years before Darkers came calling. But I felt I lost 9 things I wanted to sign to Universal.
I thought he was going to say you lost 9 kg because you were stressed.
I wish I'd lost.
All right. Okay.
No, I lost a lot of deals to Universal, and I was just thinking, well, this is weird. Like, I've never been in. When you work at XL, everyone wants to sign to you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really figure it out. It was pretty weird, because you were like, oh, Columbia seems good. Like, we got the Ting Tings and Mark Ronson and Calvin, and I've got my bit that I bring to it. What's not right? It was bizarre.
Yeah.
What wasn't right for you though?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it was post BMG Sony merger.
Yeah.
I don't know. So maybe there was, I really couldn't tell. I think it's the first point I became aware of music business politics. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
Which
that-
I don't do that. So
Does it affect confidence and morale? Like if you are at a record label like Excel, and you're doing really well, and you've got, some very key influential. You've made some very key influential signings. Then to go to a big label, and have these situations where you're trying to get artists and you can't get them as smoothly as you had before. One time, okay, cool. 2 times, all right. 3rd time after a while, does it start to affect confidence moving forward for you?
well, it only affects you start to question, where am I the right person in the wrong place? That's how I felt.
Okay.
If I was the right person in the wrong place.
That's great confidence
you know.
there, I'm still the right guy. Let's not get into it.
Oh yeah, no, it's never
It's
me.
not- yeah.
It's never me.
I'm still the right guy.
So when
I'm just not-
Darkus called, it was like, okay, well I like him. He's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know Darkus before?
No, I
Had you-
never met him in my life, but he
Yeah.
called out like, "I'm coming for you." It's like, all right, never met you, but let's meet up.
How was it meeting Darkus? Because he is one of the biggest characters.
Yeah,
in
he's
the
a
music
character,
business.
isn't he?
He really
So
is.
He's
Like,
yeah. I only knew him by reputation before.
what was his reputation before you met him? Please tell.
I mean, there was one point, maybe like the year before at the Mercury's, where he'd like let a champagne bottle off over like near me, and I was like, if that goes on me,
a
he's gonna
issue.
get done. So it was really that. It was really that. Oh, he's that Larry guy that almost sparked out once.
Yeah.
So no, it was kind of interesting to sit down and get below the surface of the character.
Yeah. Yeah, wicked. And then obviously he told you all about me, so you wanted
He
to
was
come
like,
and
"This
work.
guy Ben Scott." I think he might have come up in conversation, to be fair.
But yeah, so coming over to Ireland, I mean, I have obviously only ever worked at Ireland, and I loved it, and I thought it was a logo that I recognised from my childhood.
Same as me,
And I really didn't know. I didn't know a lot about the music business, but I did know about Island Records.
Yeah,
and
it stands for something.
It really does, and I think it's that sort of thing where I knew I could tell my family I'm going to go and do some work experience at Ireland, or I've been offered a job at Ireland, and they knew what it was, and you could name some records that were on that catalogue, that really meant something to everyone, that transcended like your taste and generation and whatever
genre.
You know what I mean?
The
Genre,
broadness
yeah.
of it. The broadness of it is one of the things that appealed to me.
Yeah,
because I'm broad in my taste, as sort of touched on.
So, you came over at a brilliant time. Ireland was really winning at that time.
Or it's just about to. It's like pre-Mumford and Florence like popping.
But it was post. It was post the Amy stuff.
Post Amy,
which was there was a well, I mean it's bittersweet, but there was in terms of records sold.
Yeah.
They'd really established themselves. She'd won 5 Grammys or whatever. Obviously, there was the tragedy, but it still felt like a good time. Some genius signed Tinchy Strider and sold loads of records.
Quite good, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then the Mumford and Son stuff was all right as well.
Yeah.
But so you came over at a good time.
Yeah.
It must have been and you hit the ground running. You came over and you signed Rizzles.
Did I? Yeah. Was that soon after? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty quick after. I
Had
mean,
it
I
there
remember
first,
that
but
they were because they'd put up a video on YouTube, Down with the Trumpets.
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember being at Naughty Boy's studio, and I don't know, we were just all talking about that record.
Right.
And I think you'd come over at that time.
Yeah.
And I think you picked it up pretty quickly.
It was Joe Taylor, wasn't it, in an A&R meeting? We were probably in the same
that's right.
meeting.
Yeah.
I went, let's go and meet. They were in Brighton. It's like, let's go Brighton. I literally walked out the meeting, got on the train, went to Brighton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was always the important thing that I do is like, if I see something,
Go for it.
got a call, and I don't go, I'll come and see you in a couple of weeks. It's like, go now.
Yeah.
It's important to be quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And how was it transitioning into another new team, like the second new team that you'd been in a couple of years? Because you came over as you went to Colombia as a head of A&R,
Yeah.
and you came over to Ireland as a A&R director. I don't really know what the difference is.
I don't know what it means either. I mean, it's all
Sounds good,
semantics to me.
Sounds great.
You know, the one thing I learned from that
sounds
is,
like more
Do
money
you know what it is,
as well.
Chuck? It's another zero.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, it sounds exactly like that. It sounds like another,
zero.
just more money.
Yeah.
yeah. But no, but the thing is, what I've learned is those titles don't mean anything. You can be an A&R scout, an A&R manager, senior A&R manager, a head of A&R, director of A&R, president of A&R, whatever you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you're only going to be judged by what you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Can I just say, just quickly off the Rizzle Kicks thing, I've been dying to tell this story. This is a small one. So, I was on the road with Angel, because I DJ'd for Angel, was an artist that he signed, and we was doing this really big festival. So anyway, we was backstage, and there was these two girls, and they was looking at us. So I'm like, hey, look, these girls, they're looking at us. Like, so we're looking at them, and they're looking at us, and they're smiling, and this is going on for about half an hour. So anyway, I'm like, do you know what? If they don't come over, I'm going to go over. I'm going to chat to them. Anyway, in the end, they've come over, and they're like, are you Rizzle Kicks? I was like, oh my. A didn't know what was going on. I didn't know. I was going to play it, and then I was going to play it off and say, yeah.
Did he know who they were?
You could do.
Because I know, he might not.
I don't even
know.
think he knew. I don't think he knew.
You could do a little tribute act.
Yeah.
I was like, we don't
Which
even
one are you,
nothing
Chucks?
like Rizzle Kicks. But yeah,
That's
anyway.
funny.
That's
Yeah, I wanted to
hilarious.
say that to you as soon as I met you. But
Yeah. So you came over to Ireland and you signed Rizzles. You also had Alex Clare.
Yeah. Alex Clare was an interesting one, actually.
Let's talk about Alex.
Because I signed this guy who was a singer-songwriter and like an acoustic singer-songwriter, like an Ed Sheeran type singer-songwriter, or like a, I can't think of examples of other singer-songwriters, but you know, that kind of like guy with a guitar, you've seen it a million times. I'm like, we don't need another one of those. Let's make this more interesting. And there was something in the demos that I'd heard like rhythmically that were kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So that led me to call Diplo and Switch, that worked with on a couple of MIA records. And they obviously they'd become Major Lazer together and all that sort of stuff. And so I saw Dave. Dave was living in LA at that point, but he was over and I played him some stuff.
David Switch.
Dave Switch, one half of Major Lazer at that point. And I just got them involved to kind of put something. And for me, actually, Alex is probably the artist I've done the most A&R on, because it was that thing of, okay, here's a singer-songwriter, but I feel like we need to kind of do something with it. And so that was, the A&R part of it was getting Diplo and Switch. And then the other A&R part was going, don't worry about making a hit. Don't worry about making a radio record. Just go and do something exciting. So they went to New Orleans to Mardi Gras and recorded there, like wrote songs there, Mardi Gras. And that just, and what I first got back, it just sounded nuts. And I was really excited by it. So that was the important kind of starting point for that record.
Yeah.
It
was because it was quite edgy sounding, I guess, in terms of production, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was full on, like sonically. Major Lazer wasn't a big success at that point.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty brave, I think.
Yeah.
And but ultimately what happened was that record wasn't a success.
Yeah.
Until Microsoft advert happened.
yeah.
And then it started to kind of like go, it's starting to climb the charts in Holland.
Yeah.
And then Germany and France. And then the last of all was the UK. By which point we dropped him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is a funny story.
It is a funny story.
So
Yeah.
So we'd put out 3 singles, we'd put out an album, we'd had a go, we'd tried, but it wasn't really happening,
Yeah.
Alex isn't the most easy of artists to work with, because he's very strong faith. He's converted to Judaism,
Okay.
So it meant that he couldn't do gigs on the weekend. There was all these different religious observance holidays, so then it became difficult. We were missing opportunities that we were being presented with because he couldn't do them for religious reasons.
Yeah.
So that was quite hard to kind of defend in the company and the label and stuff. So I was getting a lot of pressure just to just let him go, and so it just came to that point where it had to let him go, and then literally within a month
It just went.
that song was a huge hit. It sold like 5 million around the world.
That's crazy.
You know.
Was there? Did you rekindle a conversation after
Yeah.
that?
Well, I was told to go and re-sign him.
This has
And
got
I-
to be one of the.
But I
only
re-signed
times
him.
in
The
history.
point is, everyone wanted to sign him at that point, and I got him back.
Oh, okay.
You know, and I
Look,
don't,
mate, I didn't.
you know,
It wasn't me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to drop you.
Well, you know what? It was like with all of my artists that I've ever signed, I've got good relationships with them all. Doesn't matter if I've left the label. It doesn't matter if I've signed them and dropped them and signed them again. Whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know, I always kind of create a bond with the artist. You know, that's the artist is the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
You know, so you know that relationship goes beyond music and beyond deals and beyond all of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Did he write another album?
Yeah, yeah. We did another record at Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know it didn't. That one didn't work out.
Yeah.
You know, and he's done another one since.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
We touched on the Rizzle Kicks thing. I mean, speak to us about the madness of their world, you know, because they were just pretty interesting, pretty different.
Yeah, it was. I mean, what was exciting to me about them at the time was how they were the antithesis of what was happening in kind of sort of street music or whatever you want to say it is. You know, there was no macho kind of like I'm tough, I'm a gangster, I'm selling drugs, I'm gonna shoot you. It was like we're nice boys from Brighton, you know, and I liked that. It was light and it was, you know, but it was cool. You know, they like it felt like they were kind of referencing that golden era of hip hop that was a bit more light, like Beta Soul and Tribe Called Quest, and it was just like wasn't so heavy.
Yeah.
You know, and the world can do with a bit less heavy stuff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes.
Yeah.
Benny, how much records are we on now? How much records?
Do you know what? I missed out.
Was it going up by the minute?
Yeah, it's going up by the minute. So, I mean, look, Alex Clare record did 105,000. So that's a certified gold
Oh,
record.
the album,
The
UK.
Yeah, UK, the lateness of the hour. First Rizzle Kicks, stereotypical, 387k. Solid platinum record. Number 5 in the chart.
Okay.
Peak position. So we're getting there. I want to talk about like managing all of the different characters that you find in artists and also the importance of good management, you know, and how that's played a role across Nick to Dizzee, Jonathan to Adele and Jack, Joey to the boys, you know. Because I think that's something that can often be overlooked, and especially if there's young people listening in that are just starting their journey as A&R people or as managers or as artists. I think it's really important to explain that dynamic of that trio, artist, manager, A&R, because that's your guy in the label, that's your day-to-day, and obviously yourself.
Yeah, I mean, again, only with hindsight and being able to look back, I realised that actually all of the successful artists that I had also had really good management.
Yeah.
You know, and not to say that the ones that I signed that weren't successful because they didn't have good management, but the manager always has a part to play in that equation. You know, and good managers sort of just knows how to deal with everything.
Yeah.
You know, how to deal with the label, how to deal with the artist, how to just be a good middleman.
Yeah.
You know, because it's complicated. It's really complicated. Yeah.
It is. Are there scenarios where you found, you know, that it's been difficult with the artist? It's been difficult to get the record out, or you've maybe not been on the same page creatively?
Yeah, of course.
And how did you approach that? How did you deal with that kind of situation?
Well, like I say, I go back to my relationship with the artist.
Yeah.
You know, that's the number one thing. So it's about just gaining their trust. You know, and if you've got their trust, then more often than not they'll listen to you and they'll take on board your opinion. But when you don't have their trust, that's when it's difficult. You know.
Yeah.
Is you know, like, one thing I like to talk to people that have been in your position is, and it's something that you've mentioned a lot as well when we've had the conversation, is how much A&R has changed from when you started up to now. From your perspective, has the fundamental parts of A&Ring become kind of redundant due to the self-success that a lot of artists are having? Or is it still a key prominent part of the music business today?
I mean, I think I believe it's still important and still relevant. I think that it's just about having people that add value and can bring something to your project. So, you know, if you've got an artist and a manager and they're having a certain amount of success independently, that's great. But they might benefit from having an A&R person in the mix there, so helping, you know. So that's what a record label can bring. Or, you know, so I don't know. I can't think of many examples where there's been a project which is just artist and manager based. It's kind of gone on to break and kind of be sort of, there's whether their title is an A&R person. Sometimes it's the producer. So like with Stormzy, you know, I know Fraser was like heavily involved with that, wasn't he? So you know, I mean, I guess maybe that's the best example of someone that hasn't had a kind of role as an A&R person involved.
But there's still
been successful. But there's been someone fulfilling that role, maybe Fraser or, you know, and of course the artists A&R themselves to some extent, you know, but it's just having the benefit of some of that experience and that ear and that knowledge sometimes. You know, and also that distance from the project, you know. They can slightly one step removed.
Because you know you can very much be an eye of the storm, I guess, as the manager or the
be a bit too close,
and you know it's good to have a sounding board, isn't it? Somewhere just to bounce.
And if you trust them, then it's cool.
Yeah, no, exactly. Let's talk about the man Jack Garrett.
Oh yeah,
one of the most interesting and compelling acts you could see live. You know, literally a one-man band.
Yeah.
How did you come across him?
Got an email from Rick Rubin, weirdly.
As you
Just
do.
a strange way to like be introduced to something. Kind of the wrong way round. It should be me telling Rick about stuff. But anyway, me and Rick, you know, have a long-standing relationship. So we would talk about music, and he sent me an email one day saying, "Have you heard of this guy?" And obviously, I should have just gone, "Yeah, I know all about him," but I've never heard of him in my life. He sounds amazing, and then, so I kind of sought him out, and Rick came over and spent time with him, and Jack went to meet Rick in LA, and Rick ended up not being involved, but Rick was my introduction to him, you know. And he's an incredible artist.
Yeah, because he won the Sound Poll, right?
He won that year he won the Sound Poll and the Brits Greek.
So the Sound Poll is, do you know what? I was about to attempt to explain it, but I guess it's a list compiled every year by the BBC of new artists that they think are going to do exciting things in the year to come.
Ray Black won.
Ray Black won it
as well. Yeah.
Ray Black won it this year. Yeah, and
something that the music business puts a lot of stock in, isn't it? And
for sure.
Uses it as a bit of a barometer for stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I think so. You released the album the same year as he won the Sound Poll, right?
Yeah, that came out just after.
Yeah, it came out literally.
That
a month.
But it'd been 3 years built to that point. But
amazing. And again, you know, sort of different but repeated success at Island again, artist after artist. You know, you've had several artists that have all done at least gold records or had hit songs that have, you know, cumulatively done proper numbers, you know. But it got to the point where you felt like you're going to move on, you're going to go down the road to Parlophone again.
Well, that wasn't something that it didn't go from one to the other. I just stepped out and then...
Okay,
and then just,
true.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, leaving a roster again to start a new chapter, you know, it takes a lot of confidence to do that. A lot of people can stick in those jobs and think, do you know what? Maybe there's something else out there for me, but actually this is very comfy. So I'm going to stay. But what is it that has made you at each turn decide, you know what, I'm gonna bet on myself?
I guess just always just what feeling what the right thing for me is.
Yeah.
You know, if it's not right for me, then I have to just get out.
Yeah.
And you know, when I left Ireland, I didn't know what I was going to do next. Just knew that weren't for me anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
no regrets about that at all.
Yeah.
You know, no slight on Ireland or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but it just wasn't for me anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just take things as they come.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't, I didn't go to Parlophone for 3 months after that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
lots of people calling and talking to lots of people and whatever.
Yeah.
But they sort of convinced me that, you know, that would be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Understood.
at that point.
So, you know, we fast forward to today and it's like, you know, it's been a very transitional time in the music business over the last couple of years. And you could arguably say this change has been coming for 5 years, you know, and Lucian, maybe he's a visionary. Maybe he bought that EMI back catalogue knowing that all this was going to happen. But, you know, streaming has flipped the whole music industry on its head.
Yeah.
It's exciting times, whether you're, you know, major labels are earning more money than they've ever earned before, but there's also a great deal of opportunity for the independent artists and the smaller labels. And yeah, I guess, what do you make of the climate today? How does it look to you?
I mean, it feels like a very level playing field now. You know, you know, major labels don't have the kind of stranglehold on the business they once had.
Yeah.
You know, independent artists can achieve the same results as an artist signed to a major label with a whole organisation and a lot of money behind them.
Yeah.
Because the you know, because of the kind of outlets and platforms that are out there now. So that's for me now to kind of like step out of Parlophone and just be independent on my own.
Yeah.
Feels like the time. It just feels like the time to do that.
Yeah.
You know, because I think there's a lot of, you know, one of the biggest challenges over the 15 months I was at Parlophone was artists and managers going, what is a major label do now? What's their role? You know, there's a lot of question marks over it. I know what I bring to the project,
Yeah.
but I wasn't absolutely certain I could tell them what the rest of the company was going to bring to it, which was that's where it started to become tricky.
Yeah.
You know, and I think not just major labels, indie labels, any labels need to reassess what their role is in it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You know, what they're offering, what their added value is. Like, added value is my thing now. I'm not really interested in how much you're going to pay me or how much we're going to sign an artist for or this X amount of money. It's really like, well, are you going to kind of help make something successful?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? What have you done? What can you talk? You know, and
Yeah.
what can you bring to this?
Yeah.
You know, because unfortunately, you know, as much as I had some good times in all of the labels, there was times when I felt like people weren't doing anything. People weren't taking it seriously. People weren't doing everything they could be doing. There was a lack of belief sometimes. You know, obviously not all the time, but that is something that I've seen. You know, and that's just being honest and real about it. You know, that's the other side of things. We can all sit here and talk about how great it was when
Yeah, of course.
we sold loads of records on this one, but you know, all those times that you sat there on your own, you're the only person that believed in your act out of the 30, 40, 50 people that work in a label. That's disheartening,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I read a quote, I can't remember where it was, but someone had said, you know, an artist has to make the label fall in love twice. Once when they sign you and once when you deliver your album, you know. And I thought it's pretty true because, you know, that period of like initial excitement, see it time and time and time again. And then if you're not necessarily coming in with like momentum and an album that is sort of teed up to go within the first year, people do kind of get that fatigue.
Yeah.
And then there's a new flavour in a month.
Yeah.
And it is your job as an A&R person to sort of reignite that fuel.
But there you go. That's another role of the A&R personnel. Again, going back to what A&R people was, finding the song and the artist, it's maybe kind of changed a bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes your role is just to kind of be the person driving it through
Yeah.
the company, making sure everyone's enthusiastic and engaged in the act.
Yeah.
You know?
No.
But you're right. It's momentum. You know, I think there's an understanding now that 12 months isn't that long. You know, if you look at the successful stories of this year, Rag and Bone Man and Stormzy, they're 3 years coming. Jack Garrett's 3 years to get to where he got to.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it takes now.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah.
Yeah, we might have having said that, there's no science to it. We might have an overnight 12-month success next year. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's not looking that likely at the moment from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what the next big thing's going to be.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was looking at and it's it's a song, but the Dua Lipa record, which is massive right now, and it's like they've been plugging away with like she's been threatening to have a hit for a while.
Some time,
do you know what I mean? But she's had good songs and songs that have sold well, but not the proper breakout. And now it's seen.
But then there's having the song, and then there's having the
career and the record,
the career, and having an album, or having a second album, and having a career.
Yeah, of course.
And having some cultural significance, And so with everything that all of the artists that I've signed, I like to. I really look for someone that can maybe have some sort of cultural impact rather than just have a song that's going to stream 50 million. I'm not that interested in that.
Yeah.
I want something long term.
Yeah.
The majority of the artists that I've worked with have had some longevity.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
So what's keeping you busy day to day now? What does the future look like for Nick Huggett?
I mean, I'm just offering myself out there to help people.
Yeah.
Given the benefit of my experience.
Yeah.
Which is great to not just be in that kind of restrictive place of a label where your remit is to kind of find a hit. Mm-hmm. I'm not really that bothered. If it's a hit, as long as I believe in it, it feels good, and it. So I'm A&R in Jack Pignate again. I signed him 10 years ago.
Amazing.
He's making a record with Inflow and Paul Wetworth, and it sounds great. I've heard music that he's done over the past few years, but now is the time. It's sounding really good, and I'm not sitting under the illusions that it's going to sell millions of records. That's not important. Again, I think people in major labels get a bit caught up in number ones and platinum records and millions of records. It's just like I just never had that thought in my mind when I signed any of the artists I signed to Excel.
Yeah,
because we didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like, is it good? Yeah, great, let's do it.
Key.
But sometimes the mentality is like, is it going to be massive? Is it going to sell millions of records?
Yeah, yeah.
And you'll find often when people talk about things like this is going to be massive, it's going to sell millions of records, it never does, ever.
Yeah, of course. It's always the ones that are unexpected, and it's hard to break. It's very, very hard to break.
Also, how do we judge whether artists has been successful or not in 2017?
Yeah, and that's true.
We need to kind of. It's hard. There's
a lot of different pitches that you're playing on, and each of them have got different barometers. I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago where I don't know, like somebody was comparing one artist to literally to Adele or whoever, and it's like not every artist is supposed to be that big, and that doesn't mean the business.
But also doesn't mean they're less worthy.
Yeah, it doesn't, and it's like everyone's got to play their position, and I came back to the thing about like the side of record sales and money. Like people are making music as. Music is therapy. Music is what we will turn to, whether we're celebrating, whether we're grieving, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? And it's like that's not qualified by the amount of records sold or the.
That's not the most important thing.
No, I thought that was interesting. But
yeah.
Well, it's been.
Any record do you want to?
Do you know what? As I said, I missed out a few numbers. So this is what's the word that I'm looking for?
So you didn't tally it all up for the end, just to say.
I didn't, because I missed out a couple. Missed out a couple, but I think this number's pretty big already. So we're going to go with it.
What is it?
So
how many albums sold?
Well,
remember, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. But
true.
It doesn't matter. But
doesn't matter. Was it any good? Yeah.
He has done 3.5 million albums.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Just in the UK. He's done 8 times platinum, 7 on Adele, 1 on the Rizzles. We call that 8. We can call that 8, right? It's not 2 platinum albums. We just call it 8.
Yeah, right.
Just call it 8.
Yeah. Round it up.
A few golds, couple silvers.
We'll just call it 8. I'll
He's
round
in the
it
game.
off to 10, to be honest.
If you want to get hold of Nick, nickhuggett.com. He's also got a bio on there, and if you've made it to this point in the interview, you could have saved yourself an hour and a half. But thanks for listening anyway. And
Thanks for
Nick,
coming
it's
by,
been a
man.
real
Thanks for having
pleasure.
me. It's
All,
nice to
Yeah,
talk
man.
to you.
all
Yeah.
jokes
Wicked.
aside, this is one of the nicest people you could ever meet in the record industry. Genuinely no bullshit, real music lover, and a great person. So Nick,
Thanks,
it's
mate.
been
Thanks for coming
amazing
by,
to sit
man.
down. All
Much
right.
appreciated.
Thank you.
You want to make some noise? Make some noise for man like Nick.
Makes noise to myself.
Yeah.